This is HBR News number 463. Neil Gaiman in the Me Too crosshairs, a woman's scorn from beyond the grave. Where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you are laughing at all of the absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. My name is Brian, and I'm joined by, as always, my lovely and intrepid co-hosts, Mike and Hannah. And we're going to be talking about some news stuff this week. So on this week's show, we've got some new updates regarding the Covenant shooting. Neil Gaiman, you guys might know the writer Neil Gaiman, famous for his book Sandman. He was a comic book writer, but I think he also writes some stories. He's even written some movie screenplays in the past, and he was basically like a beloved author, especially amongst scene girls. And apparently he's under fire for SA is what I'll put it that way. A woman, despite the father of her child's wishes, takes her kid into Ukraine, which is it's a problem and more. So stick around; it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron only show. Oh, I know. It's kind of baked in. Well, it's the. I am bound by my script. I am, but I also think that there is some. I don't know. I feel like there's going to be suffering. There's going to be turmoil in the world, and the only thing that we can do is hope that the damage is minimal, and more than that, hope that people can learn something from it, so that they can avoid it in their own life, if at all possible. I don't know what else to do. Like, these things are going to happen. Yeah, that's true, and there will be a good discussion. So, Mike, some people are saying they can't hear you. I want to check and make sure that. Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, no, it's good now. It should be good.
I think I'm turned up full.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
I'll just talk louder. Ah!
No, you don't have to. I think we're good. Okay. It's just that there's like a lot of settings, and when I do the shows with Allison, my different things are at different volumes, and then when I do this one, it's a whole different setup, and I have to like bear that in mind. So you guys should be good. So, all right. Anyway, let's see. Oh yeah. So we're going to be getting into the stories, and I was going to say, oh yeah, and be sure to join us afterwards of the patron only show. So Allison gave Riverside a shot. She's not really a fan of Riverside as both a podcasting service and a clip making service, because it is overpriced. And I told her it sounded really overpriced, but she is using something called Opus Clip now, and Opus Clip seems to be have a lot of advantages that the other thing didn't have. And so we're going to be going through the Opus clips for the last show that we did with Allison, which is the show that I did, which is called Women Should Be Roasted, and This Is Why. So you can join us and look at the clips and maybe engage in some women roasting of your own if you wish. To do that, you have to become a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. It's feedthebadger.com/subscribe to do that. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you'll be able to watch a lot of additional content and do all the things with the other patrons that are there. So hopefully we'll see you guys there. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that our content is no longer on the internet at all, or at least it doesn't seem to be, but the internet never forgets, so you will be able to find it by going to badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com to find all of our content archived. All right. So with all of that out of the way, let us get into the stories today. Well, that kind of rhymed. I didn't mean for it to, but it does. Okay, so this is an update on the Covenant School shooting that happened, right, by the trans man, Audrey Elizabeth Hale. And this is all, people are trying to get answers, questions answered and all that. So here's the latest. So Tennessee Chancery Court Judge Aisha L. Miles, pictured here, ruled in a decision released at 11:58 p.m. on Thursday that none of the writings left by Covenant School killer Audrey Elizabeth Hale shall be released to the multiple parties who sued Metro Nashville to secure that release, citing the copyright claims of the parents she earlier allowed to intervene in the lawsuit. The Tennessee Star editor-in-chief, Michael Patrick Leahy was among those from the media suing to compel the release of Hale's writings. Prior to her ruling, Miles first controversially allowed parents from the Covenant School, and the Covenant Presbyterian Church to intervene in the case after Hale's family claimed they assigned them the copyright of her written materials. Miles declared in her Friday ruling, quote, materials created by Hale are exempted from disclosure based on the Federal Copyright Act, end quote. Miles also stated that, quote, the release of the remaining documents, which are not original, derivative, or compilation works created by the assailant, is further constrained by the exceptions to disclosure set forth by the General Assembly during the pendency of this investigation and any legal proceedings thereafter. The investigative files of the police and materials therein are not available, end quote.
The police are in possession of these documents, correct? These 50 pages of this murder-suicide note. That's why it's so hard to get hold of them, because they're in police custody, right? That's where they will stay, come what may. Is there really a copyright law so serious, so felonious, that it supersedes the police and whichever agencies to whom the police answers, and their collective obligation to keep hold of evidence crucial to a case, a mass murder case, no less? Like, why is copyright law even, like, what is it doing here? That's a different sitcom altogether. It's like Chief Wiggum turning up on the X-Files. Like, why are you here? No one asked for this. But apparently some parents own these documents, and since they haven't relinquished them, they apparently want to own these documents. For what purpose, I don't know. Pin it to the fridge, sure, whatever. If it's all you have, it's all you have. But while the parents apparently own it, the police are going to hang on to it anyway, indefinitely, right? So what's even the point in any of this and any of these hairs and any of the splitting of these hairs? For everyone who's yelling at me right now because you understand the law, shut up, I'm doing a bit. Is that really how this works? Parents just own this shit by default? Because if that's the case, then someone owes Ted Kaczynski's parents a pretty penny, because that's the stuff of legend. The blank and its consequences have been a disaster, and so that's their meme. They own that. If you've ever used that meme, you owe a kickback to Mr. and Mrs. Kaczynski of the Kaczynski estate. Who gets the rights to a 10-part Netflix series about a certain supreme gentleman who famously left his video manifesto online for all to see? How many of us are going to have to scrub away a lot of online content from 10 years ago, lest we be sued for copyright infringement by the evil stepmother who kind of allegedly the whole thing into existence in the first place? Somebody's got a hold of Anne Frank's diary. Some museum somewhere is making a fortune gatekeeping the document that proves that history is not always written by the winners. And it seems they owe that fortune to Mr. and Mrs. Frank, who I presume are also presumed dead. So to whom do we give these reparations? We'll have to trace it back as far as we can and then trace it forward as far as we can until we could... Fuck, it's just the Jews, isn't it? Just give it to the Jews. Just let them do whatever they want with it, and we won't have to feel guilty.
With interest, of course.
Doing a bit. So here you go. The Bible. God wrote the Bible, so it belongs to God's parents. What? Where are we now? We don't have gods for this recursion. It's fine. God is God's own parent, as God is God's own Holy Spirit or whatever. I think that's how it works. So it all bootstraps itself. We are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. So you can just pay anyone for a Bible, anyone or anything. You can give a cow 2 shekels and say, thanks for the Gideon's Bible. And they'll be like, moo. And it all comes around one way or the other. So, yeah, don't feel bad. Children get murdered all the time. It's part and parcel. Have you tried just not fucking worrying about it? All right, I'm done. You may now yell at me for everything I got wrong about this case.
It's gonna be an interesting thing to see if this goes, if people appeal this and it goes to higher courts and everything. Because anything that's been written, you can copyright it. Any artwork, any creation that you've done, it can be, the creator can copyright it. It can be copyrighted by the person who owns it. So if the creator dies and the creator's parents or siblings or children or whatever inherit it, they can copyright it. And thanks to Disney, copyright lasts a long time. So it's possible that we may not find out the answer to whether or not this person actually committed this crime because both of her parents molested her for 75 years. Like,
wait. Do you think that?
Well, I think that they have something to hide.
Yeah, I think there is a shame that they do have to hide for sure.
We certainly don't know. We don't know that it didn't happen because there's nothing out there published from the manifesto that says that's not the reason, right? There's nothing out there published from the manifesto that says it's not because her parents beat her. Nothing out there from the manifesto saying that it's not because her parents forced her to transition against her will, or, nothing saying that they left her with somebody that did her terrible harm and maybe knew about it or didn't listen to her when she complained. Nothing like that has been published because the parents hid it. So any speculation whatsoever that we might make, well, there's no proof against it. We have no reason to be certain that they did nothing wrong. That's all I'm going to say about it. Like, they just basically put a target on themselves that, they've got something to hide in that manifesto. We don't know what it is. And the worst possible speculations that you could come up with, well, they just hid the only thing that could prove them wrong.
Yeah, but it is interesting. This is a really unique case because, as Mike's was doing in his bit, there's lots of people who have done things and there have been manifestos, and they haven't really been a problem to find, or at least in many cases, if it turned out they were, I don't know, like white supremacists or misogynists or whatever the narrative of the day is, no problem finding those. But this one is really under wraps. And it could be because the parents have some skeletons in the closet they're trying to hide. I don't know, but I do hope that they take it all the way because we want to know the truth. And this isn't the only trans shooting event that's happened, or the only incident that we never learned anything about. Do you remember the Vegas shooter? Yeah, that was just like, we don't know anything about that anymore. That's just kind of water under the bridge now. Or there were other incidences of trans youths, lashing out on the general public. And I think that what is really in danger is not necessarily something on the individual level, like with those individuals and maybe what their personal experience or their trauma was, but I think it may have something to do with something that could be affected on a larger scale, like the various kinds of medications they were on, the kind of treatments that they were getting, the kind of ways in which the people that were sort of authority figures outside of their parents were involved with their lives. And I have a feeling that there's something about that has because why would a judge go this far if there wasn't something, someone,
a judge
or
ruled that because that's what the law says. Copyright law does actually give the parents the right to copyright that piece of work and to hide it from the public, to say nobody can publish it. That is legal. So the judge didn't really have much of a choice in the matter. That's the law. What I'm looking at this from a different perspective. Like the judge can't just be like, well, in this instance, for no reason other than that people really, really want to violate the copyright.
sure,
It's legal to violate the copyright, right? There are ways. There is such a thing as fair use that can allow copyright to be not violated, but you can get around it. So, like if you're making something for the purpose of educating the public, or if you're doing something transformative, there are some instances where that does allow. It doesn't mean like a teacher can just mass produce copies of something and hand it out to their students, but they can show it in the classroom, for instance.
sure.
So there's a lot of things like that copyright can be a little bit malleable, but the judge couldn't just rule that they have to hand it out to anybody who asks. She
Right, sure.
Now there may be the Supreme Court. That's basically how copyright's been interpreted in the past, right? The Supreme Court could come along and say, well, in this instance, it's newsworthy, so it can be reported on, and copyright can be violated that way. But they haven't done that so far with something like
Right.
this. So
Well,
the
that
judge is it's not really the judge being activist here. It's
no, but
parents being activists. This is 100%
Sure.
on the parents. They
Sure.
are to blame for this situation. And
sure.
I think they're hiding something, and it might be that they are to blame for the shooting. Like
Yeah,
that's my
it's
opinion.
possible. It's possible.
I don't want to get down. There are things I could say about the judge. I mean, she does kind of look like an OnlyFans model in a robe. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she's wrong about this.
Yeah, right,
So
right.
I don't want to have us saying things about the judge that are not true. I suspect the parents, and that's why I made that point about the worst allegations against the parents that you could make as far as what they may have done to cause their daughter to do this could be true for all we know. We don't know because they just hid the evidence.
Right. Right. And well, what I was going to say is that they could, isn't it also true that they could just violate the copyright to release the information and just like pay the fine or whatever? Like, I don't know how serious like that. I don't think it's a felony. So they might, it's sort of like, do you do the right thing? Do you do the right thing knowing there will be consequences, but saying, you know what, I'll deal with the consequences because I think that releasing the information is more important.
Yeah, it depends on how much value gets assigned to this. Like if it's really sought out by a lot of people and the parents put a price tag on it and it's a high price tag, if it's high enough, there are serious penalties. There's jail time. You could have whatever equipment you used to dispense the information destroyed. So for instance, if somebody published it in a newspaper, that could be their whole printing press system down. Any computers
Sure.
they use to so it is something that you have to exercise a lot of caution with.
Well, some of these pages have all
Disney for this. Disney put big teeth in copyright law because they wanted to protect their works from being used by people after a certain period of time. They extended it. They had it extended for a long time. And I mean, Congress is the one that made the laws, right? But they made it at the behest of Disney. This is pretty much why it is such a strong law in the United States.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully, like I said, some of these pages have already been leaked. Steven Crowder's investigative journalist sort of like team that he works with they got their hands on a number of pages from the manifesto. I don't know if that will result in penalties or if there are legal fees or legal struggles that those people will have to go through, but I just want the truth. So I hope we can get it. All right, well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We got to move on to the next story. So I got a super chow from Not Clyde with an I, and they give us $10. Thank you, Not Clyde. And they say they molested her for 75 years. No, the 75 years refers to how long the copyright will essentially protect the document or property. So they wouldn't be able to show it for 75 years. If there was evidence of molestation or talk of molestation, you wouldn't learn about it for 75 years. I know it sounded like that because when I heard it, I had a moment of what? 75 years? She's only like 19.
75 years.
But that's how long, that's how long it would be before you found out.
Yep.
So that's just
the other thing is, if somebody does release that information now without the parents' permission, it's entirely possible, like I said, if they put a big price tag on that that document, then that individual could go to jail. Now, Disney's not the one that did that. The company that was created to enforce copyright against people who are downloading songs on peer-to-peer websites, they're the ones that put those particular teeth into
the
law.
Napster.
Yeah, Napster, not Napster. Napster was actually the one making the downloads available. I can't remember the company name.
I'm just gonna blame Metallica then.
Yeah, so thanks, Metallica.
You remember Metallica was really upset about that when Napster was around.
Copyright law enforcement is now like a freight train coming your way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So no,
all right.
My point about that isn't that, I necessarily think anything specific in regard to what the parents did to cause this, but I have reason to believe now, since they are trying to hide what she said, that it must have been about them, and it must have been pretty bad.
Yeah, it must have been pretty bad. That's what I want to know. But anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one. We're going to move on to the next story, so let's get into it. Yeah. Isn't that how the Metallica guy sounds? All right. So we're going to talk about Neil Gaiman. So best-selling author and comic book creator Neil Gaiman is facing sexual assault allegations after two women have alleged impropriety. The first woman, a 23-year-old named Scarlett, worked as the nanny to Gaiman's children in February of 2022. Scarlett alleges that while the relationship started off as consensual, Gaiman would eventually turn it non-consensual. Okay. She claims that he made her engage in rough, penetrative sex acts, including one instance where the pain was so great she passed out, and another instance in which she begged him to stop, and he then beat her with a belt, because that totally looks like this guy. I mean, it could be. I'm just saying this sounds strange. Scarlett eventually filed a police report in October of 2022, but the investigation stalled, with New Zealand police stating that they made a, quote, number of attempts to speak to key people as part of this investigation, and those efforts remain ongoing, and that there are a number of factors to take into consideration with this case, including location of all parties, end quote. Another woman, 38 years old, only known as Kay, claims that she first met Gaiman at age 18 and would go on to have a relationship with him in 2005 after she turned 20. Much like Scarlett, Kay alleges that Gaiman forced rough and unwanted sex upon her in the relationship, including one instance in which he forced her to have penetrative sex despite her suffering from a painful urinary tract infection. Kay never went to the police, and this is seemingly the first time she's been public with these allegations since they occurred nearly 20 years ago. Gaiman admits to engaging in sexual relationships with Scarlett hours after they first met, but claims the 3-week affair never moved beyond digital penetration, that's with the fingers, and that it was consensual at all times. Gaiman denies all of Kay's allegations and stated that they disturbed him. And also, I wanted to show something else, because Gaiman made a public statement on Twitter, and I want to grab the link for this before I forget. and maybe share it on the screen. Well, it's just an image, so I will just share the image where he said, let me just share this really quick. On a day like today, it's worth saying, this is in 2018, I believe survivors. This was related to some other incident, but he was just chiming in. Men must not close our eyes and minds to what happens to women in this world. We must fight alongside them for them to be believed at the ballot box and with art and by listening, and change this world for the better.
Well, the first thing that stands out to me is the phrase 3-week affair. So that would indicate that either they were holed up together for 3 weeks, at the end of which she left, or she was involved in a relationship with him for that amount of time, during which at different times she left and came back. And unless he had her locked up somewhere,
Yeah.
she could not escape. I don't see kidnapping as part of these investigations. I don't see wrongful imprisonment or anything. I don't remember what it's called when civilians do it instead of the cops. But I don't see anything in this allegation about him keeping her in a location against her will.
Yeah,
And that seems suspect to me. If she continued engaging with him in any type of sex acts at all during that time period, after he did something that she considered non-consensual, like that would be, you would leave and not come back after something like that happened, and maybe go directly to the hospital and the police and all the things that you do after a sexual assault. And that didn't happen. And that just makes me kind of wonder, what really happened during that time. I'm more inclined to believe him than her because of that. Because if that was me, like, and I mean, I wouldn't. The last time I actually had the experience of a painful urinary tract infection, I didn't go anywhere. Like, I didn't go out on dates. I didn't do any of that stuff because it just is a very unpleasant experience. So this idea that she went on, some sort of a date with this guy, and then he made her engage in rough sex. Again, it just seems kind of weird behavior right there. But maybe I get them worse than other people. I don't know. Everything else tells me that my pain tolerance is higher than normal. So, like that just blows my mind that the one lady accuses him of beating her with a belt, and then she eventually filed a police report, but didn't do it right away. If somebody hit me with something like that, I would be the fuck out of there, and I would be at the police station immediately, if not at the hospital first.
Yeah, it's already a red flag when we're calling it sexual impropriety, because of how broad and ever broadening is the scope of what it entails. It could mean anything from saying, "Looking good, Susan," while in possession of an ugly face. You've all seen them. To spanking someone's ass during anal sex. It all counts as sexual impropriety. Anything can be sexually improper. It could mean going clockwise when you should have gone counterclockwise. Point is, you'll notice he is not being accused of, have we said it? Grape.
Yes.
We have sexual acts being incidentally described as, and I quote, unwanted and non-consensual and forced, which very much, I mean, that is grape. It's in the description of the crime, and yet it is not how the crime is assorted. It somehow doesn't amount to a grape case. It seems odd. So I know it. I know it seems predictable that every time we get a Me Too story, we give the case for the man's innocence. Meanwhile, every time we do a story about Little Miss Pedophile, the middle school teacher, we give the case for guilt. Maybe it's bias, maybe it's reality. It's probably a certain ratio of both. But I like to think we can at least aim for the sensible center on the way down. So, okay, maybe Neil Gaiman does have some demons. It seems like
Yeah, right.
a reasonable assumption. Maybe he has the kinds of demons that cause a sort of wiring issue between your fighting instinct and your fucking instinct, and now you can't have one without the other. I don't know how it works. I don't know why it works. I don't think it sounds particularly healthy. But if you're able to get it out of your system with a sparring partner who is ready, willing, and able, then all right, whatever, fill your boots, mate. And that's the important distinction: ready, willing, and able at the time of incident. There are subs and there are doms. It's fine as long as you establish your roles ahead of time. But you don't spring it on someone out of the blue. You need to thoroughly explain what the deal is with the strap-on before it has already begun penetrating its intended destination. So do these stories sound like women who signed up to be doms but were surprised to find themselves as subs? Because that is the very first thing you need to prove or at least show evidence of before we can even approach the territory of legally actionable offense. For example, let's say he or she choked you during sex to within an inch of your life. How many times did he or she or Zimzer choke you during sex to within an inch of your life before you decided that you'd had enough? I put it to you, members of the jury, that my answer, for what it's worth, much like Hannah was saying, my answer would be no greater than 1 on that occasion. 1 would be my limit there. As a person who categorically does not approve of being choked in any given situation, sexual or otherwise, I would not hang around after that. And don't get me wrong, I've seen some shit. I've had blackouts from which I've woken up with total amnesia. And yeah, it's weird. It's like life itself suddenly rebooting and going level 2, or more like you died level 1 again. It's a disturbing experience, and I've had it. But you know what I've never had? I've never woken up from that blackout to find myself naked and unable to breathe. That would be different. You can imagine being spontaneously reborn into the world with amnesia, into a scene where you're naked, you can't breathe, and there's another naked person on top of you. That's, if I wasn't expecting that would be a deal breaker for me. I'd be like, well, that was odd, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm not going to hang around for another week or 2 or 4 for another 26 sexual encounters. I'm gonna head off. I'm gonna shoot off. I'm gonna go back to Stephen King. He's a simple man. He likes to sit in front of a roaring fire while receiving tantric hand jobs through fingerless rubber gloves for sessions that can last days on end. And oh god, the blisters. But it's worth it for the health insurance and the holiday pay. Where the hell was I going with it? Yeah, this sounds like some women who absolutely knew they were going to be subs who wanted nothing more than a big, strong, stupendously wealthy dom to dom all over them, and then they proceeded to ride that dom train as far as they could before it became apparent that this guy's actually got a bit of a sadism fetish. He's not just a regular guy who like does his best to be assertive and self-confident because he thinks women like it. No, this guy's actually one of those broken, dead-eyed Christian Grey types who has a fetish for the dreaded violence against women thing, and who unfortunately also exists because he thinks women like it. And sorry, if you're an adult, it's up to you to avoid that shit in the first place if you're not into it. never mind the second place, let alone the third place, and so on. And yes, I suppose I do sound biased when I keep beating this drum. We're always here going, maybe this man is innocent. But maybe that's an important element to this acrobatic performance. It's sometimes called sweeping. Have you heard this? I don't know how new this meme is, but I think it's short for sweeping under the rug when you sweep. It's like when you're spending when you're spending all your calories making excuses for something appalling that some celebrity or other is said to have done. And yeah, you could call it sweeping. You could also call it a safety net. And when a woman is accused of something, she has a safety net of the entire judicial system, the entire legislative system, and so on. Many safety nets. When a man is accused of something, if he's lucky, he'll be defended by this layer of popular but impulsive YouTubers who sweep for the guy even though he's a man. But that layer can be breached by one expertly timed information grenade. He admitted that he said something. He didn't say what he said, but by the tone of his writing, I got the impression of a guilty conscience. So I'm done sweeping for this guy. Sorry, guys, you were right. I was sweeping and I was wrong to do it. And then the trap doors open and your man is dropped into the next layer of hell, where the popular kids have forsaken you, where your only saviors left are those who will sweep for you, not despite you being a man, but because you are a man. Yes, that's what we do here at Honey Badger Radio. We do it because no one else will do it. There are very few of us left in these underground tunnels eating rat burgers and so on. Welcome, Neil Gaiman. Go have a chat with Dr. Disrespect. Get to know each other. Your appointed MRA social worker will be with you shortly. Oh, wait, there aren't enough of us. Not anywhere near men who populate the underground tunnels of the legally unprotected wastrels of this world. Massively outnumber those of us who would deign to help them by an unknown order of magnitude. Well, so yeah, I'm very sorry. You're right. You got us bang to rights. We are extremists. We're the people trying to catch the men as they fall from the rye. Not the rye. That's someone else's metaphor. That's some other book.
Oh,
there we go. There you go.
The trapeze act.
Ah, yes.
Because there's nothing between the ground and the male acrobats except us and a thin velvet veil of a safety net that's very brightly colored but couldn't hold the weight of a swooning blue bottle, while the female acrobats have 12 layers of canvas and 3 trampolines and a vat of custard to dampen their fall, just in case they grape yet another minor in a janitor's closet in a school 26 times. You know this to be true. It's why we exist. You don't have to be thankful that we exist. You don't have to be thankful that there is something between you and the bottomless pit that awaits you, gentlemen. But you should know it is there. We might not even be able to help you, but we'll be there to say hi, high five. You're not alone as you're falling headfirst into the bottomless pit. You're listening to Honey Badger Radio. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and share the video. It's scary.
I also want to point out the reason that you hear us frequently leaning toward guilt with regard to the teacher issue is because quite frequently when we cover those stories, it's after they've been convicted. And it's usually also in conjunction with there were a bunch of text messages released that were between the teacher and the student that made it 100%
suggestive photos,
sexual relationship.
Yeah.
And the student is underage, and that makes it a particular type of crime. So we usually advocate for due process, but when it is a cut and dried case like that where guilt has already been determined by a court and it's on the basis of things that are pretty much irrefutable evidence of guilt, we're going to lean toward guilt.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, the discussion isn't about whether or not they're guilty. We're usually talking about like, okay, like what, it's usually a reaction to what the
Why was the
sentencing
sentence
was.
so short?
Yeah, like how light the sentence was, or whether or not it counts, because a lot of people have this, idea that like when it happens to a young man, because young men preteen, even preteen boys, they're horny all the time. So why wouldn't they want this? And we're trying to disabuse those notions, because that's kind of like what normalizes this kind of behavior. In fact, I mean, when it comes to, and I got a bunch of other stuff to get to, but just really quick on the teacher thing, one of the things that's really amazing about the comparing the predatory female teacher stories to, say, celebrities that find themselves being accused of things, which is usually how this goes. You have these whether they're e-celebs or big giant writers or actors, like Danny Masterson or like Bill Cosby or whatever, is that in there's a definite contrast in how these things typically play out. And the with the teachers, we already know, and nobody seems to it's not like something that is a scandal in the eyes of the media or the average person. It is simply, oh, look at this whoopsie, this woman just preyed on this kid, isn't that funny? And if the woman is somewhat conventionally attractive, it's even more likely to be dismissed as kind of like this silly thing. You only have to look at cases that have gone really far, like Mary Kay Letourneau, I think that's the really famous one, where she was on Bill Maher and he was like, well, they should be together, and you would never do the opposite. There are no stories that are of male teachers preying on female students, or male students for that matter, and that being sort of treated in the same way. Yeah.
Mary Kay Letourneau case, she was dead before her victim started to realize that he had been victimized and
that he had been groomed.
His life.
Yeah.
He was talking about it publicly, and you could see the moment when it started to click with him that that should never have happened to him, and that was actually predatory. Everything she did was predatory, and so on. And this is the thing that a lot of people don't realize, how vulnerable boys that age are, because when they hit puberty, their hormones go out of control and their impulses go out of control. It doesn't mean that they are equipped to act on those impulses with full understanding and full competence to protect themselves from any negative consequences, including emotional, psychological, mental consequences that affect the rest of their lives. And I've had teachers converse with me about this, where younger teachers, and this happens to girls too, by the way. Girls, when their hormones hit, they have the same problems. Okay. So teachers who are young and attractive, generally speaking, take great care to avoid creating the impression that they are in any way, shape, or form sexually available when they are at school. They take great care to protect their students from the vulnerability that they're experiencing at that time. So when a teacher doesn't do that, that teacher is behaving abnormally for an adult, and that teacher is behaving abnormally for a teacher. And a lot of times the students don't figure it out until much, much later. This is, the parents might get in and protect the student. The other teachers might get in and protect the student. The police might get in and protect the student. The student might protest against all of that. But 10 years later, they realize this was really bad. That's why when an unusual or abnormal type of sexual behavior is incorporated into victimization of an underage person, whether they're a little bit underage or a shitload underage, they don't always understand enough about what happened to them or have a frame of reference for it enough to tell an adult, explain to an adult what's going on, seek help, and prosecute. It's an entirely different thing than when somebody does it to somebody who's in their 20s and that individual doesn't go to police for 20 years. When it's, a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old, they may think, oh yeah, this was perfectly okay. But if the person did it is an adult, no, it wasn't. Absolutely was not.
Yeah.
or even an older kid that knew better, absolutely was not okay.
No,
There
of course
was
not.
Violence absolutely was not okay.
Well, again, like we're looking at this story, and there's a woman who started a relationship with Neil Gaiman when she turned 20, and we're supposed to find that scandalizing. So I wanted
Find
to.
that scandalizing. That's
No,
not
I don't
cool.
either. But I mean, this is a thing that we see. Like right now, I think Tobey Maguire is dating someone who's like, very young, but like not underage, but very young. And everyone's like, oh, talking about it, because Tobey Maguire is like coming up on 50, or he might be 50. But
Now, I will
anyway,
point out this though. If
yeah,
you're that age, if you're in your early 20s, I wouldn't advise getting involved with somebody that's 20 years your senior, because you are a legal adult. You are competent to appraise your actions and so on, but your brain's still growing and you still got about 5 years. And
yeah,
there are going to be ways in which that other person is competent that you haven't developed yet, and you are on your back foot in the relationship, and you may change in ways that may destroy that relationship later on. So don't think of that as a potential long-term relationship. I like, if you want to dick around with somebody that's way older than you, it's not you're not doing anything wrong and they're not doing anything wrong if you're an adult. But don't count on that to be a lifelong relationship, because you are going to change. And conversely, you run into somebody when if you're in your 40s and 50s and you run into somebody in their early 20s that you think, oh, this is it, this is the one. Be aware this person is still developing a lot about themselves. That they might be the one if they were going to stay that way the rest of their life, but in 5 or 10 years, what you're looking at might be a whole different person than the person you started a relationship with. And it'd be different if you were both in your early 20s and you were developing together. You might develop in the same direction if you're really dedicated to each other. But this is why I don't recommend people get married before they're old enough that they could have gotten a master's degree in college. Not that they need one for marriage, but that time frame, you have a lot of development that takes place during that time frame. I think a lot of the reason for divorce in the world today is that people are getting married too young.
all right. Well, let us know what you guys think about this. I wanted to just read through some super chats and super chows, and I have a question. So if a grape takes place but the guy doesn't nut, is it a seedless grape? All right, anyway, so I got a super chow from Richard Bier, who gives us $5 and says, perhaps George Soros would have incentive for the furtherance of his myriad of agendas could fund the release of the Tranifesto. I think that would work against his goals, but I don't know. I can't get into the brain of that man. And then I got one from Zeranx for $5, and he says, there are two kinds of folks who sit around thinking about how to sexually assault people: psychopaths and fiction writers. I'm the kind that pays better. Who am I? I'm Neil Gaiman. Any Castle fans out there? I don't know what Castle is. That like a show? Sorry, I don't know what that is. But thank you for the super chow nonetheless, Zeranx. And then I got a super chat from David Smith, and he says, where has Gaiman's wife been in all of this? She's an uber feminist who was very vocal during #MeToo. I don't know. It's a good question. I would think that their relationship is going through it. But maybe they were swingers, and this was all like she was involved too, so it's possible. Thank you for that.
No, in a situation like that, when people are rich and famous, a lot of times they do have unusual relationships.
And she's probably, like, honestly, like, again, spitballing. I have no idea what the truth is. Don't hold me to this like I'm making a claim, but if there was a situation where Neil Gaiman and his wife were like, having guests over for the purposes of sexual frolicking, it's possible that the wife could just have an out, be like, yeah, I was there for that, but I didn't see anything gross going down, and that he's the only one who has to bear the consequences of allegations. And again, I would say to all you guys out there, if you ever become famous, man, be very, very careful. Like, if you just end up in a situation where you could be intimate with a woman, that you don't know that well, I don't know that that's even like a good idea, no matter what, like no matter what your status is or whatever, because these things, they can bite you in the ass, especially if you're rich and famous. So
Exactly the same thing goes if you're not rich and famous.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it can, but I'm saying like when you have more that they can take from you, I think that's what I'm saying. It's not about like just to destroy you, sure, just to get out of trouble, sure. This totally happens. Brock Turner is an example. But if you're like really rich and high status, and let's say a woman goes on a one night stand with you and she's hoping to use that to keep you, and then you say no, I'm I can't be nailed down or whatever, right? She could then make a claim at some point later, get a payday out of it, like what happened to the baseball player. Yep. She could just destroy your reputation to give her some clout and sympathy and from people around her. So I think that all men are vulnerable, but I think that very rich or very powerful men are more likely to run into this kind of person, because it is a predatory thing if that's what's happening. Again, I'm not speaking to Gaiman's situation, but
we don't know, because most people don't run around yelling in the streets, I'm in an open relationship, come fuck my wife, come fuck my husband. No, that's not how it usually goes. You usually deal with networking with other people that are in similar types of relationships, and you usually don't find them in church. So basically, you're going to see this more among people in industries that make a lot of money, doing things that are more open to, like the industry is more open to people on the left, or people who are not religious, people who are maybe alternative religions like pagan religions, people who have other mentalities besides the straight-laced conservative types. And you might see more different sexualities and among your coworkers, and it's political correctness as a whole different set of rules in those areas, right? You're more likely to find people in those relationships in those areas, and then you end up with a whole different set of problems in your relationship that your straight heterosexual 2-person only relationship has its own set of problems that can happen with it. But as soon as you get into open or swapping or any kind of, like, there are different
situationships, polycules
that happen, all of that stuff comes with its own set of problems, and one of them is that women are, generally speaking, possessive in different ways than men are, and they may think of themselves as not having the capacity to get jealous. It's rare. It's possible. There are people that don't get jealous over affection and relationships and sex and stuff like that. Like I am one of those people. I don't get jealous about stuff like that. I get jealous if you think of something before I do. If you turn out to be more creative than I am, then I'll get jealous about that. But that's I think a little different in terms of jealousy. But you still have the possibility that the guy in the relationship may find himself the target of a woman who thinks that she's going to get involved with him and then push his life partner out of the picture and take her place. And I've watched that happen in 2 open relationships that I was not part of, and I've watched while both of those relationships were almost destroyed by it, and then the woman who failed to push the life partner out went on to say nasty things about the guy, try to spread rumors about him, stalk him, harass him, and eventually have to be shut out of his life and his friend group. And it's been really, they turn out to be like really freakishly scary people. And both times she had the chick, both chicks had borderline personality disorder. So you kind of have to watch out for a lot of stuff. People think of the woman as being more vulnerable in these relationships, but the worst thing that happens to her usually is that she has 10 offers for every one he gets, and so she has to be pickier. Whereas, when he gets offers, the types of women that are usually okay joining in with these types of relationships, they're either very naive or they're the crazy that you shouldn't stick your dick in. And so it's worse for guys. It's more unhealthy for guys in some ways to be in these open relationships, because they end up getting targeted by crazy women.
Yeah.
Or that they end up with women that change their minds and then feel victimized later.
Yep. All right, and then I got another super chat from Albert Nader Retro, and he gives us $5 Canadian. Says Leonardo DiCaprio, Brian, he's dating a 19-year-old model, and the old bags and jealous simps are pissed off. Yes, but also Tobey Maguire. Look it up.
Yeah,
it's very recent news.
They're not doing anything wrong. Those men are not doing anything wrong, but they may find themselves like falling out of love with those girls if they're in love with them at all, just because they will change as they get older. So like it's their business if they're going to do that, but they're setting themselves up for problems later. It's a rare thing for a gal that age to get involved with a guy that age and 5 years later still be the same gal.
Yeah.
You got rich male celebrities who for some reason are having sex with young hot women. Like, it's crazy. No one can explain why it would happen. Meanwhile, rich female celebrities have 3 different children, and they're all transsexual.
Yeah, and adopted sometimes. All right, let us know what you guys think about that. I got another super chat, and I got to move on. So Zarek gives us $5 and says, for Vili Lau to recognize he was a victim after Letourneau's death, they were already divorced. He still is the father of their 2 daughters. Thank the New York Daily News for covering the story almost 30 years later for whatever reason. All right. Thank you for that, Zaranx, and let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We really got to move on to the next story. Oh, and I wanted to give a quick little shout out to Mnemonics for making me this art, because I specifically requested that somebody make artwork of why am I forgetting his name? This guy from the World Economic Forum, because he was accused of posing suggestively in front of women. Yeah. We covered that last week. Yeah, we covered that last week. So this is the evidence. This is Exhibit A of the suggestive posing Klaus Schwab was engaged in. So there you go. All right. Well, anyway, let us know what you guys think about that in the comments. Shout out to Mnemonics for sharing that. That was great. I was hoping somebody would answer the call, and sure enough, they did. All right. So a Ukrainian woman has won a high court battle in order to take her child from her husband back to Ukraine despite the father's objections. The family fled Ukraine before the war with Russia began in February 2022 and relocated to London in December of 2022. The father obtained a court order preventing them from leaving the UK, but Mr. Justice Hayden has now ruled in favor of the mother, allowing them to return to Ukraine. The judge stated that the mother's city in Ukraine has managed the war well and that the child needs the stability of their home and family in Ukraine. The mother argued that there was never an intention to permanently move to London and that she would protect her child if the situation worsened. The father maintains that they had agreed to the relocation and that staying in London was safer. The judge concluded that the child was most integrated in Ukraine.
So is the father Ukrainian also?
I think they both were. Yes, I think it was a Ukrainian family, but they fled to London because Ukraine was being invaded, and the father wanted there was an opportunity to go, and the father wanted the child in London because he felt that it was safe. Well, in the UK at least. I don't know if London is safer, but I'm sure it's safer than war-torn parts of Ukraine. But he was trying to protect his kids. So.
And is the child old enough for service? I mean, I know they may be a toddler, but they're still old enough to load shells into the cannon or be a shell.
I think Zelensky's government's working on it. Yeah, I
You guys
mean,
laugh, but in Mexico, they're putting guns in the hands of 5-year-olds. So that's not even, people don't even recognize that Mexico is a war zone because the war is between the cartels and the rest of the people. But there are some villages where they've got 5-year-olds carrying guns. In fact, we covered that not just months ago, but a few years ago. And as far as I know, it hasn't changed. So don't be shocked if you find out that Ukraine, in some remote areas of Ukraine, that there are children that are having to defend their homes as well as this conflict goes on. But what kind of asinine judge sends a child into a war zone for any reason? I'm sorry, but that's crazy. There's and for them to be like, oh, you know, this part of the country, it's not affecting this part of the country that badly. Can't that change? How big is Ukraine? It's not that big. Right? It's not the size of the United States. It maybe it's bigger. I don't know. Maybe it's bigger than I'm thinking. But if I was a judge and a country the size of the United States was in a war, and most of the fighting was taking place in California, I still would not send a child to Virginia. Right? I just wouldn't. Because what if, right? It can go clear across in a few days. It doesn't change anything. So this doesn't make any sense to me at all.
yeah.
And I would be concerned about the mental health of a mother that wanted to take her child into a war zone after they had fled it to be somewhere safe, and to take a child away from the father because other people that were not the father of the child would provide more stability after they'd made the decision to flee the area where those people were because it was dangerous.
Yep. Somebody in the chat asked if this is a person I spoke to. No, Nova fan, this is not Cesar Quintana. That is a different situation. So this is a separate instance. I believe these were Ukrainian people. They're not giving any names, so I don't know why that might be. Probably to protect their identity for whatever reason. But Cesar Quintana's wife, he met her in California. She was originally from Russia, I believe, or Ukraine. And she took his kid to Ukraine, and now his kid and his ex-wife are in Russia. Like, they're in St. Petersburg, and he is, I believe, in America trying to, work out a legal deal. So she kidnapped his child and is in Russia. This is that's a separate story. Also, tragic. Hopefully, I mean, look, it looks like Ukraine is not going to win, but I think that Zelensky's going to get as much out of this as possible. Hopefully, the damage is minimal, but I think it is extremely strange that the mom would want to take the child despite the husband's cautions against it, and the judge backs it up. It's like, I don't know. I hope nothing bad happens, but it's not good.
So I just looked it up. Texas is bigger than Ukraine. So basically, yeah, in a matter of hours, fighting could get to where they are if it started moving.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't have time to get back out of the country if fighting started moving in your direction by the time that it got to where you were. You wouldn't have time. And it'd be different if it was as big as Russia or the United States. We just drove from Ohio to Nebraska recently, and it took us, because you have to make stops for food and everything. And when you're in poor health, you make more stops. So it took us about 16 hours, but it's not really that long of a drive. But that's not the whole drive across country. But if we were just driving across Texas, and that'd be much easier. Ohio, you can drive across in 3 or 4 hours, but Ukraine's about 6 times the size of Ohio. So
Yeah.
it'd be pretty scary to be in any part of that country. You can. There are people that we know in that country that are away from the fighting, but there's always the worry that that will change, and you do never know what's going to happen. And I like either that woman is an idiot, or there's something else going on there that we're not being told about this story.
Yeah, could be.
I think the war's already over. I think the war has been over for 2 years. Like someone asked somewhere, "What do you think is going to happen with the Russian war?" And my harebrained prediction was Russia's going to take over the eastern bit, the Donbass region and Crimea if it hasn't already, and then it's going to be over, and people are going to forever wonder where the hell all the money went, and if they ask about it, they'll just be thrown in the gulags. And I think that's what happened. I think the war was over 2 years ago, but people are still using it as an excuse to do whatever they like, to launder however
more
much
money
they feel like laundering to whatever remains of the Ukrainian government. And some woman can demand that her child be transported across war zones or whatever. I think everything being told is a lie. I think death everywhere. I think everything is a lie and everything is death, and we should prepare for an infinity of lies and death forever.
Does that mean that death itself is a lie?
It might. Well, it is. We're all one consciousness, experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death. Life is a dream. We are the imagination of ourselves. Here's Tom with the weather.
We may be walking around dead right now doing these podcasts.
We died in 2012.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I died in 1984, so there you go.
Well, let us.
Purgatory for a long time.
Yeah, that's
in the Big Bang.
the Cambrian explosion. Well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I'm going to move on to the final story, which is a little bit weird, but I thought it might be interesting. I did get a super chat and a super chow, I believe. So Albernated Retro gives us $5 Canadian and says, Hannah, if you were a judge, the Pink Cat Hat Brigade would be protesting 24/7. Yes.
You should see what they would do if I was president.
And I think that's it. For some reason, I thought there was a super chow, but let me look and see if there's Rumble rants. No Rumble rants. I am checking on there, though. Rumble gang. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. And let's get into the last of our stories. So this one's a bit of a story to the story. Wife revenge from beyond the grave. Catherine Kasanoff, a prominent attorney and former special counsel to the New York Governor Kathy Hochul. You guys might know Kathy Hochul, who said to Trump, let's see how well your hair does in a blizzard, died by assisted suicide in Switzerland, leaving behind a complex and controversial legacy. Her ex-husband, Alan Kasanoff, claims that Catherine's suicide was a calculated move to torment him and their children, alleging that she had crafted a false narrative portraying herself as an innocent victim and him as the villain. Catherine's online postings of legal documents and videos have led to significant social media backlash against Alan, with TikTok influencers and others amplifying the allegations of abuse. Catherine announced her decision on Facebook, citing terminal cancer and a predatory court system that separated her from her 3 daughters. However, Alan disputes the terminal cancer diagnosis, claiming her oncologist gave her a clean bill of health. Throughout their custody battle, Alan accused Catherine of fabricating abuse allegations and strategically manipulating the situation to her advantage. The court had cut Catherine off from contact with her daughters, leading her to assert that the system was unfair and biased against her. The Free Press conducted an investigation revealing conflicting accounts of Catherine's character, ranging from calm and competent to manipulative and abusive. 4 nannies provided disturbing accounts of Catherine's treatment of her adopted daughter, Allie, describing incidents of verbal and emotional abuse. These allegations painted a picture of Catherine favoring her biological daughters while mistreating Allie, her adopted daughter. Catherine's final statement blamed Alan for her situation, claiming that he spent millions to keep her away from their children. Psychiatrist Colin Brewer, who approved her assisted suicide, noted that Catherine was resolute and clear about her decision, which he described as an existential assisted suicide motivated by her perceived mistreatment by Alan. Alan, who denies all allegations of abuse, faced significant personal and professional repercussions, including resigning from his job. He insists that Catherine's narrative was false and that her actions, this included her offing herself, have caused immense emotional damage to him and his family.
So usually, when you see suicide brought up in terms of a custody battle, if the person only takes themselves out, usually that is an indication that they are trying to escape an intolerable situation. But there's extenuating evidence here. You don't usually hear from people who were not directly part of the conflict saying, yeah, this person was abusive, yeah, this person demonstrably treated one child differently.
You were just starting to talk about this situation, so we should be live. We should be live. We're live, so go ahead and start over.
Really don't have external statements from like outside of the custody battle from witnesses to the lifestyles and actions and behaviors and attitudes within the couple's relationship. And with the nanny saying that she was abusive toward at least one of the children, treating that child differently than the other children, that says a lot. I've again been witness to different family situations within my own family and outside my family where one child is adopted and another child is biological, or there are stepchildren, or there are very, very much within my own family, there was a household with children from a first marriage and then children from the second husband's first marriage and children from the couple, and the children from the first marriage also had siblings from the first husband's first marriage to his first wife, and they all meshed together, and nobody was like, well, you're not my real brother, you're not my real sister. It was just, it's us against the world. We are going to band together and love each other and take care of each other, right? So I've seen it from that perspective, and to see people talking about, well, she had an adopted child that she treated differently, or a stepchild that she treated differently than the other children, that's segmenting people off in your mind as not as much worth your love and affection, right? That's the first thing. So that indicates abusive tendencies in the mother to begin with, and then viewing the act of setting things up afterward, after the suicide, to continually attack the ex, the father, viewing that with that context of her already abusive behavior, that is evidence that she was doing this to abuse him. But there is a whole other story outside of this woman being abusive and being able to abuse this man in this manner, with basic impunity, because what can you do to her now that she's dead, right? You can only make his life miserable, and people are going to be way too quick to believe her because she committed suicide. But the other story that comes out of this, the whole other story that comes out of this, right? You just heard that she didn't use assisted suicide to make her cancer death less painful,
Yes.
right? She used it to get out of the divorce. She convinced these people that she got to kill her, that it was just an intolerable situation. So we were told when assisted suicide first started getting discussed, this is only in the case of terminal illnesses where the death that's inevitable is intolerable, like with ALS, where you choke to death, right? Where it's you're going to experience this if you don't die before that. That's not what this is. This is a woman who came along and said, I'm very upset about this situation. I want to die, and got assisted suicide. Right? That is not, that's not helping her. That's not providing her with an escape from something that she's dying from, that's going to be more painful to die from if she doesn't commit suicide. That is using suicide to bypass life, just normal life. I don't know who initiated the divorce in their situation, but I do know that fathers don't usually get custody unless there is something wrong with the mother. And it's possible for somebody to get custody because he has a lot of money and can manipulate the system. But he still has more of an uphill battle than a woman in that same circumstance would. And for anyone in the medical field to hear somebody say, I want to die because the situation that I'm in life is very rough and I don't see a way out of it, that should be a situation where they talk to the person about mental health treatment, about life coaching, about anything they can think of other than, okay, well, let's just end it all. Nobody should ever be advised to commit suicide to get away from a divorce battle by any medical personnel. It doesn't matter whether your profession is assisted suicide or not, which nobody should be doing that as their main profession either, because there shouldn't be enough call for it. But no person who works in medicine, particularly not a doctor who takes the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm, should be giving any person the advice or the go-ahead to kill themselves to get out of a rough situation in life. It's bullshit. I don't care if it's a man or a woman. Both sexes will have this come up. Both sexes will have circumstances in their life. They're in terrible debt and they have to declare bankruptcy. They're getting a divorce and they don't know how they're going to live without the other person. Their spouse died and their heart is broken. Right? Their kid died. Their kid was in an accident and died, and they don't know how to live with that. I've met people who have experienced all of those different things. One of my childhood friends drowned in Indian Lake. I couldn't even go to the funeral because I couldn't bring myself to see him dead. There's very few things in the world that I have trouble facing, but I couldn't face that. Yeah. But if somebody had come along and said, well, do you want to die instead? That person would have been a predator. And the doctor, the so-called doctor that killed this woman, is a predator. Hands down. There is no alternative explanation. When someone comes to you and says, I am in emotional pain from a life circumstance, not a chemical imbalance that's never going to go away, which even then, that's something that may be treatable, right? Something that can be changed, something that can be fixed, something that you could learn to live with and get past. And they kill you because you said, I want to die right now. That's a predator. That's somebody
Yeah.
who went into it because they wanted to kill people with impunity, not because they care about people. And this man is suffering now because of that. But that woman is dead.
Yep.
So yeah, don't go to North Sentinel Island in the Indian Ocean, because famously its inhabitants will kill you as soon as you land. They've been there for thousands of years, just living out their Stone Age lives, and they've figured out that if any outsider comes anywhere near their island, they will throw a spear through their throat as soon as possible, killing them. And don't go to Papua New Guinea either. Certainly not if you're sick, because they're cannibals and they will eat your brain. And when they do that, they will all catch a horrible disease, and they will all die slowly and horribly over the course of several years while developing this brain condition where they expect impending doom. And don't go to Canada. Now, it sounds like I'm saying these things like they're different topics, like they're different situations. Like going to North Central Island is in any way different from going to Canada. It's not. Canada in Canada, the government will come to you not with a spear, but with a syringe, telling you, "Hi, do you not like it in Canada? Have you considered dying? And do you see how that's not even the North Sentinelese with extra steps? It's the North Sentinelese with fewer steps."
Yeah.
It's awful. Everything's awful. I hate the world.
All right, we're going to wrap it up there, though, guys. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I just think it's wild. The depths of vindictiveness, assuming this is true, that some are capable of. All right, so we got some super chats and a super chow. The super chows always take precedent, so I will read that first. From Richard Bier, who gives us $5 and says, the Italian pharmaceutical company that was making the drug used in Canada's MAID procedure has discontinued supplying it on the grounds that they don't want their products being used for executions. It has been mentioned that the drug also causes pulmonary edema, and because it also paralyzes the patient actually experiences a drowning death and is unable to express the discomfort. Sorry about mentioning this now, Hannah. Wow, very enlightening.
I think everybody's heard me express how I feel about the death penalty, what I think of the death penalty. Like, we can't trust our government to be honest about the little things, right? We can't trust our government to be honest about whether or not they're wasting tax dollars that they're stealing from the public. We can't trust our government to make smart decisions about your diet. We can't trust them to make smart decisions about transportation. We can't trust them to keep the roads consistently. Like the thing that we're supposed to be excusing government for existing because we have to have this or whatever. We can't trust them with that. So why are we trusting them to decide who lives and who dies?
Yeah.
If we didn't have the government, then mobsters could get away with murder. You see what I'm driving at?
I do. I see what you're doing. Yeah, see that. All right. So Albernator Retro gives a super chat for $2 Canadian. Says, sounds like a real life Gone Girl, only Amy deleted. And then yes, it's true. And then I got one from Chili Guy 52 for $5. Thank you, Chili Guy. And he says, when you accidentally take the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for
when
all
are we going to start
of
calling it the Hippocratic Oath?
Yeah. All right. We got two in one show this time. We got Hippocratic Oath and Seedless Grape. All right. But anyway, we're going to go into the patron show now. We're going to look at some Opus clips. I'm going to probably have to restart my OBS because I had to start it in safe mode to finish the show because it crashed suddenly. But that's not a problem. Only take a minute. We're going to head there now, though. So please consider joining us by going to feedthebadger.com/subscribe to start a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you'll be able to like watch all the additional content, hang out with the patrons. It's a very lively space, perhaps almost as lively as our shows. That gives you a sense. I don't think I'm selling this very well, but anyway, it's a good space though. It's a good space to come and hang out, and we have lots going on. So hopefully we'll see you guys there. feedthebadger.com/subscribe, and if you want to send us a message that it will essentially be sure to get to us and also allow you to say whatever's on your mind without any fear of reprisal from the powers that be, then go to feedthebadger.com/just the tip and tell us your thoughts on whatever you want to say. Make recommendations, yell at us, make arguments, whatever. We love to see it, and we will respond on the show at the next relevant time. All right, so anyway, thanks guys for coming on today's show. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today, and please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we'll talk to you all in the next one. See you next Tuesday. That's right.
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.